Hello, hello, friends. It's Sunday. Happy Sunday. And welcome to Power Time with Sharon Herbert, the Power RN, coming to you live from PowerInNursing Innovations. So we're so happy to see you again on a beautiful Sunday afternoon in Maryland. It's close to 80, but it's sunny and bright. So we took a few minutes to pop in to meet up with you as we've committed to do every Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So thank you for allowing us to take a bit of your time today to talk about nursing. And remember, you are so welcome to comment and ask questions. It is our pleasure to be available to serve you. So, today's topic is, of course, nursing. So today we are mixing it up a little, but of course, you can enter any comments you like and ask any questions. The topic today is, what do nurses want? Now, give you the short version of my bio. If you haven't met me before, I am a registered nurse and I've been one for a good long time. And it is so important, the work that you do and even your presence in the places and spaces that you serve. You're irreplaceable. Don't forget, you're also brilliant. But as we're here because we choose to be, we have to be sure that we are welcomed into the places where we serve and that we serve with purpose. So that comes down to what you do, why you do it, where you do it, and what you desire or deserve to be compensated for your service. So what do nurses want? That's a big overarching question. But let's just put a little facts in there. FACTS, facts. You know, and I know, that nurses face so many challenges and stress in their roles, in our roles, and especially over the last 3 years due to COVID. And we don't have to identify all of those challenges, but we'll talk about a few. So how do we retain employment and improve job satisfaction? How do we get those two things, to stay where we are serving or can serve and improve satisfaction in our workplaces overall? And in essence, we should always be concerned about change and support in our workplaces. Excuse me. So let's talk about some important aspects of what we need to consider and desire to enhance our work environments and job retention. And these are the same factors that your employers should be considering as they think of retention and the nursing shortage. Nursing shortage. Things that we can consider and consider the change in a few of them. One big giant one. Number one, safe work environment. That's what nurses want. It's what everyone wants in their workplace. We want a safe and supportive work environment. So we have to have equipment to work with, like PPE, And everyone remembers when COVID started, what did your organizations have to offer you for safe work environment and PPE, infection control measures to minimize our risk of exposure to infectious diseases like COVID? Did you have gowns and masks and hand sanitizer, soap? Did you have waste baskets that were emptied? Did you have enough red boxes for your syringes and needles? These things we must have. It's not a maybe. Safe work environment, number 1. We're always interested, and it seems to be the number 1 ask every time. And I want to make it an ask, yes, but not a number 2. Because in most organizations, and I say most, not all, nurses are compensated. Their salaries may not be involving hazard pay or overtime or benefits, but those are some things that should be equivalent to our 3 E's. Do you remember those? Education. What's number 2? Experience. And number 3, expertise. So, in order to retain staff, you must, organizers and healthcare systems must pay the persons, the staff, according to their 3 E's. You're not going to get folks to stay in an organization if they are not paid competently. And it's not a surprise. So it's a no-brainer. We have talked about that so many times. And when it comes down to strike time, that seems to be the one and only challenge that is brought to the fore. So that's number 2. What about staffing levels and ratios? And we've heard more and more about staffing levels and ratios since the pandemic. But remember, that's nothing new. That's been a challenge, for such a long time. And if you work in the state of California, or you know anything about the state of California and the staffing levels and ratio messages and challenges that they have faced, and they're looking, and they started this whole ball, somebody had to start it, to make sure that there were not an overwhelming and overloaded staff to patient ratio. There would be 1 staff to how many patients if you're in the ICU? Well, if you were in California, you had 1 number. If you were in Arizona, you had a different number. And New York or any other state, they weren't really meshing. The numbers are not just set in stone. The staff and those 3 E's and the patients and their level of illness and their own experiences makes it all fluid. ICU is not going to be the same, most likely, in Idaho as it is in New York, Florida, California, the more populated states and locations. Overworked workloads lead to overstressing, overwhelming, and overworking the nursing staff until or through to burnout. And that can so negatively impact patient care? If a nurse or the nursing staff is overwhelmed, how will the patients receive great care that will foster excellent patient outcomes and patient care? It's something that should always be considered. And I remember back in the day when I started my career, actually, simply, the charge nurse and nurse leaders got to determine how many staff were needed for each shift, for each patient level of illness. It wasn't someone who was sitting in a closet that saw, 8 patients in the ICU and could decide that you only needed 2 nurses. Someone in a foreign land, in a foreign closet, I'll not say foreign land, in a foreign closet, who had no idea what nurses do. So that's so important. It is still important, and nurses must have input into the staffing levels and ratios. It can't be a computer in a closet, because you know what your patients need. You know their level of critical illness, and you know how they will need to be treated. That's number 3. Number 4, things that we want to consider always is professional development and training. Now, way back before 2020, no one had ever heard of COVID. So, who knew how those patients or persons should be cared for? And as we got to know more about the pandemic, how did the health care providers know what those patients needed and how to get more information about COVID and what the pandemic could look like, how it started, how it would affect those persons in the public and those persons who are providing care for those sick people? We have to be able to find that information. And it can't be that you just look it up on, a 5-minute break that you have. We must know the specific information that's needed to care for each and every patient scenario that we will see. We can't just guess. We're pretty good at planning the care, but we need the information. So we have to have opportunities to receive that information. And you can't do it while you're working nonstop. You have not eaten. You haven't had anything to drink. Your patients are crashing. You have 2 vent patients and a new admission. You can't do it. And we know that we need that information to safely practice and grow our careers. Who would agree? Who would agree with that? We need the information and we need time to process it. What would you have done if you had this to do all over again as we found ourselves in 2020 with a COVID pandemic? But as well, how will what you know and what you learned then influence what you'll know for the next time? But you have to have time. You have to have time to do that. Number 5, one huge gigantic thing that it is the you, the me, the nursing profession that has had challenges with recognition and appreciation. And we don't have to look around and say, well, I never knew that, I never heard that, I never felt that. Because if you have missed any conversation in any nursing conference, forum, seminar, summit, or you've been absent every day from work, there's a challenge for you to find out what is going on in your workplace and how nurses, the most powerful, impactful, absolutely necessary part of the healthcare team. How can the system work without recognizing those nurses and our efforts and contributions? And it's not just the, oh, yeah, we have nurses. How will you retain those people that you absolutely, absolutely need to provide care and service? Health systems can't exist without you and without me. So let's continue to remind them that it's important to recognize your staff and help boost their morale and promote the expertise of the nursing care providers to those in the community, because the patients cannot live without nurses. So help your organization boost you and your colleagues. And we'll talk about that more. But I want you to think about ways that can be done in your organization. And number 6, work-life balance. Now, we have to be healthy. We have to be healthy in order to continue to be available to provide care and services to those folks that need health care and services to stay well themselves. If we're sick, we can't provide those services because now we're stuck at home. And now, how does that affect staffing levels? That's a challenge. It's a real circle. So everything is related. And it's all relative and relevant. One of these 6 things that's out of whack or out of order will be a significant challenge for the circle of healthcare providers. We can't do it alone. We need to consider our own health and safety, and self-care is so important. And that means that you have to care for yourself. You have to advocate for care for yourself and your colleagues as well. And those things like reasonable work hours, flexible scheduling. And you've heard me talk a lot about flexible scheduling when I talk about scheduling. And if you and your colleagues can flip around and make changes for yourselves based on those 3 E's, if I have them and you have them, we can switch our days and our shifts without leaving blanks and holes in the schedule, without having to have someone always work Friday, 12 hours, always work Monday, 12 hours. If that's what you choose and it works for you, that's best for you. But if that's something that's generated by the computer or your manager, there should be times when you can flex up and down based on your staff and your colleagues working in tandem. That's called team. That's called team. And many times you all know each other sometimes better than your leaders or managers. You know that your colleague has a child who is 10 years old and is playing football and has football games on Thursday evening. You can easily help your colleague be able to get to spend some time with their family and go to those football games on Thursday if you and that colleague can switch your days. Let your manager or charge nurse know that that's what you can do, and you can help each other. Respect and collaboration in the workplace is so important. We can do those things because we know each other and we value each other and our time, that we can be available to spend time with our families or help coordinate the decision-making processes, like discharge time, like how many staff you have, how many days you work in a row. All of those things you can do together. That's a volunteering. That's a volunteering. And helping each other with discharge planning and coordinating translations, all of those things are things that we can do together. Yes, teamwork does make the dream work. So are these things that you want? Any or all of those things? If they are important to you, give us a comment, or you can ask a question about how we can get any or all of those things done in our workplaces and organizations. It would be important for you to share what you think or know with your leaders. So, let's get back to that list. What do nurses want? Number 1, a safe work environment. Number 2, fair compensation and benefits. And those things are most often, kind of written in stone, but that doesn't mean it can't be changed. Let's get our thoughts together and write it down, what we want and why, and what the best outcomes can be for the organization and for the staff. Like staffing levels and ratios, that's number 3. Always a concern, because your staff will burn out if they aren't recognized and supported in the work that they do. Number 4, professional development and training. Yes, we will often look up things for ourselves and share with each other, but it has to be something that's considered an absolute option for nurses to spend time getting additional education. Some of us have not been in school for a really long time, but we still need to know what's happening in the healthcare world today. More education, certifications, those things can support the growth of all of the nurses and help increase their measure of value for self. Number 5, recognition and appreciation. And recognition of nurses can never be underdone. It is important. even if it is one that you are celebrating, and not just once a year at Nurses Week, because each and every day and each and every week, nurses are working hard. You've got to say thank you. You've got to show thank you to help boost the morale of the community of nurses and increase job satisfaction. If you don't want people to stay, never say thank you. Never acknowledge their presence. You will have a big, big problem. It won't take very long for you to see how people respond to being ignored for their presence and their hard work. Number 6 is work-life balance. We need reasonable work hours. We need to have time with our families, to take a breath, to go on vacation, to have breakfast, lunch, to go to potty, to plan for a day off, or any other things that you desire to recharge and prevent all additional stressors and burnout. We've got to be avoiding and managing those stressors before we are overwhelmed and burn out. I'm not going to say that having a day or two off or not working 3 in a row is the answer for everyone, but it can be an answer for someone. We've got to pay attention to ourselves. What do they tell you on the airplane? If there's an emergency, in case of emergency, an overwhelming stress is an emergency. In a plane, they tell you put your oxygen mask on first before you help others. You've got to be well, and you've got to stay well. So take it to heart. Self-care matters. You have got to take care of yourself before you can care for others. And number 7, teamwork. Collaborative and respectful workplace culture. Let's work together. Each member of the health team is important, an important component of the team. So make sure that we all work in concert to solve the problems that we all face every day, and be a part of the decision-making process, because that affects patient care and outcomes. It is important that we work together, and that's not news. So as we've talked about 7 of the ways that nurses can decide what they need, we have to speak about it. We have to speak about it. And we will. We will. I thank you. Before we finish for the day, I thank you for joining us for Power Time. Remember, think about what you want. What would make your workplace and space better for you and your colleagues? And even as we talk about compensation, just think about your environment, because almost everything else we talked about was related to your environment, your workplace and space. What can change? What about supporting your mental health? Now, when we talk about health, people think it's physical health. Mental health is important as well. And what are the programs that your organization has available for you to feel better, to feel better, to feel less anxious, to feel less stressed. We will talk about how to get these things done on our next event, in our next presentation. And what I'm going to do today is I don't want to wait a week to talk about what's next. So we'll talk about it tomorrow on Monday Nurses Life. We have a few more minutes to talk about how we will make these changes. How can we make these changes to make our workplace and space what we want so that we are feeling well and that we are able to stay in the place and space that helps us help others. Yeah, it's hard to do things when you're feeling challenged and anxious and you're not well and your feet hurt and your back hurts and you are stressed before you even get to work and you're not eating well, and that eating well is a huge challenge, and especially for many nurses in intensive care settings, that you get to work and you're rolling and you're running and you're running and you're running and your patient's crashing and you're getting a new admission. It's not you come to work and you sit down in a chair and say, okay, 4 hours or 6 hours, I'm out of here. You don't know what's coming your way. You do know that preparation helps, but we can't see that 4-car collision on the Beltway. We can't see or foresee that fire or that bus crash. We've got to be prepared for an intensive care day. That might mean limited potty time, limited breaks, and on your feet running all day. How do we get our leaders to acknowledge what we're going through and help us to do the best for the patients and the system and the community? If your organization isn't able to care for the patients that are there because the nurses have flown the coop, that's going to be a real challenge for them to stay in operation. So that's another opportunity to work together. Let's think about how we can work together to make some of these things work for nurses. Because nurses will say, we love who we are and we love what we do. Help us to help the organizations recognize that, so that patients' outcomes are better, patients are satisfied, the system, healthcare system, organization, C-suite members, they love their numbers because their outcomes are great, the patients are happy, and the healthcare providers, nurses, therapists, x-ray techs, unit clerks, they're all happy because we are working with best interests of all those who are working for the patients. We can do it. We know we can do it. So tomorrow, join us at 15:15, that's 3:15 Eastern Standard Time, at Power in Nursing Innovations Monday Nurses Life. I thank you all so much for each and every moment that you share and care for your patients and your colleagues. We need you all to continue to keep our persons in the community well. And if they're well, they're not in the ICU. That means we've done a good job, we, the community of healthcare providers, of keeping them well and able to stay at home. Everyone doesn't have to be in the hospital. No one wants to be. I can tell you that my own self, as I spent, a good several weeks in the hospital and a week and some in the ICU. It's not where you want to be. You want to be home with your family, reading books and singing and going to football games, taking vacations. You want to be compensated and valued for who you are and what you do. And let's show our executives how much that means for us today and in the future. Thank you so much for coming on out today to PowerTime. We love you, and we'll see you tomorrow at Monday Nurses Life. Look for your invitation. I will make sure that I send the invitation. That will be part 2 of this presentation of what keeps you. What will keep you? What do you want? Thank you so much. Love you. And we'll see you tomorrow on Monday Nurses Life. Bring your ideas and your solutions.